Ballpark Nation presents. Welcome to Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
Good morning, Astros fans. I am Jim Christopher. This is Go Astros. That is Andy Tom Chesson. That is also Brian Arbor. And your Astros have a magic number of 2, which is kind of neat because we're using fuzzy math this week because they can just need 1 win in the next 3 to get 2. I love baseball math, Andy.
Well, I mean, we play 162 games. It's math based on 163 games. None of it's a perfect equation. But all we have to do is win 1 game in the next 3 days. And even if we don't do that, we still have to win 1 game, and Seattle has to lose a game somewhere. So odds are good that we will be celebrating our 7th full season division championship in a row soon.
Brian, I noticed that I don't know which national media it was that tweeted out that the Astros are going for their 7th consecutive, like just completely ignoring 2020, which completely upset Dodger fan today.
Look, we're all trying to forget 2020.
I definitely don't. I will not share a picture from a flashback thing if I have a mask on. I can't do it.
I mean, regular citizens, social media, politicians, we're all just ignoring 2020 and pretending it didn't happen.
Yes, that's very, very good point. So yesterday, the game, look, not a great result. Overall, a pretty average week. Again, yesterday's game notwithstanding because of just how it really fell off the rails really, really quickly. But, you know, it's funny, Andy, because it's a game we've seen. Astros fans will tell you we've seen it all the time. We've seen it a handful of times where the bullpen has completely shot itself in the foot. I think Espada was getting a little cute last night and going to Neris instead of just going to Abreu and trying to steal some outs and keep those guys fresh. But either way, it just didn't bother you as much the minute you found out that the Rangers had walked off Seattle.
Oh, I mean, I think Yordan Alvarez's injury notwithstanding, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, it was just kind of a series of unfortunate events. Once Spencer Arrietty's calf started cramping in the 6th inning. So they didn't bring him back out, even though he was at like 78, 79 pitches, somewhere in that realm. And then the bullpen proceeded to coin a term I've used the last few weeks, step on their own dicks repeatedly. Neris, Abreu, and Hader were all markedly ineffective. The Angels took advantage. I'll say this for the Angels. The Angels are a last-place team. They have the personnel for a last-place team. But for this series, they played hard, which is more than I can say for our neighbors to the north, who seem to have mailed it in for most of the last week. So, you know, you tip your hat to the Angels because sometimes this stuff just happens. But, yeah, was there a little bit of overmanaging going on? Maybe. But when your starter goes out and you thought you were going to have him for another inning and can't go, and all of a sudden you're pushing guys to warm up quicker than they thought they were going to have to. Doesn't excuse giving up 7 runs in 3 innings, but baseball happens sometimes.
Yeah, and not all of those. There was a lot of nubbers, Brian, off the end of the bat. Baseball definitely happened.
They won 3 of 4 against the Angels, 1-1 in the close games, and 2-0 in the blowouts. If you scan out to any larger picture than yesterday, fine. They've won 8 of their last 11, which has been useful because Seattle's been actually pretty good over the last week. They haven't been the 500 team they usually are, and they're going to finish with above 500 records. So I don't think they're going to quite get to 540 like Jerry DiPoto wants them to, but they're going to get real close. So, you know, successful season in Seattle, apparently.
Yeah, and I want to echo Andy too, you know, because Jessica and I were at 2 of the games over the weekend, and the Angels, by like statistically, not a very good team, and the players in the lineup, not very good players, but they definitely played like they were. They played hard. They played like they were still playing for a playoff position. Again, unlike our neighbors to the north, who seemed just had many opportunities to win those games against Seattle and just didn't really try. That was a Brian comment.
I mean, they won yesterday in the bottom of the ninth, so I appreciate that. And got a hit in RBI from Marcus Simeon in my fantasy league. So
Yeah.
thank you to him for finally doing something this season.
Yeah. And mostly I just wanted to reflect on how hard Anaheim played, but we'll move
Yeah.
on from that. Um, so I watched the Yordan Alvarez over and over again. I was there. Look, I actually believe the Astros this time when they say it was a bruise. Everything that looked like he landed hard on the dirt, as opposed to I didn't see anything caught underneath him, anything twisted or anything that would indicate something that's going to remove him for the rest of the season in the playoffs. Brian, any thoughts? Do you believe the Astros this time when they say it's a bruise?
Yeah, that's the indication so far. Obviously, one thing to look for is I suspect he will not be in the lineup tonight. But is he on the IL tonight? And again, based on everything they said yesterday and based on everyone's talk, my guess would be no. Uh, Fingers crossed. I'll be happier when I see him fully in the lineup soon. I guess the other thing to sort of note on that is Kyle Tucker did tell Joe Espada, "No, I'm good. Put me in the lineup every day. Put
And
me
he's
in the
played
field every day because I don't think Jordan will be playing much left field the rest of the season."
well. And Andy, one of the things about it though is there was definitely a long debate about whether Jordan was coming out of the game or not. There was, I mean, they were on the field for a while, so it almost made me wonder if there was this thought of, okay, it's the Angels, there's bigger fish to fry, why risk anything?
I expect to see him at some point this week. It wouldn't surprise me to see him tonight. It wouldn't surprise me not to see him tonight. Just it's a bruise. Hopefully, that's all it is. I do like his father's new approach, though, to preempt the medical staff. His quote last night was, "It's not great," which is completely ambiguous. You can't pin him down on anything, but it feels darker than, well, it's just a shin contusion. We'll see him back in a couple of weeks. I like that we're just taking the medical staff completely out of the equation as far as quotes. Um, I don't know the rules. Is there a point of putting? Let's say he was hurt. Is there a point of putting him on the IL because there's only 6 games left?
And
Would he
roster
have to
spot.
miss the first playoff game?
I don't think he would.
I mean, that'd be interesting. I don't think they're getting there. That hasn't come up in our world in a while. Um, I get the sense that he's probably not hurt. I get the sense that this game mattered a little bit more yesterday. He would have stayed in. But Jim, I think to your point, it's the Angels, and at that point they had a what they thought would be a comfortable lead. So why push it? Um, these next 3 games are important. They're important for a few different reasons. A, you want to win the division. B, you want to put Seattle out of their misery. C, you want to build some confidence and momentum going into the playoffs. Um, our starting pitching looks good. Hitting's looking pretty good. Bullpen's looking kind of rough for the last week or so. Um, so it's there's some things they could work on. You want to be building up. You want to be the Padres right now, where you're building up to playing really, really well going into the playoffs, because that's historically what you see. It's not the best team during the 162. It's the team that got hottest for 11 wins. That's what typically happens in the playoffs. So it will be really interesting to see how Espada handles it. If they win tonight, I would not expect to see many of your regulars for more than a couple of innings for the last 5 games of the season. I don't think catching the Guardians is a thing that is either accomplishable or necessary. And I get the feeling that the Astros are of the same mind on that.
Yeah, it's so funny to me how at least for the longest time, they had the Astros led the Mariners by the same number of games they trailed the Guardians. And yet the attitude was there's no way the Mariners are catching us and we absolutely can catch the Guardians when, it's the same reality. But yeah, Brian, I imagine you're going to see a lot of part-time playing going on and people getting off their feet. You got to
Yeah.
figure if things go well tonight, tomorrow you've got the hangover game. So hopefully that's a thing.
hmm Yeah, maybe that's Seattle's goal is they should tank tonight, get hangover, see if they can get hangover games and half games from the Astros the next 2, because the Mariners are quite alive for the wild card because the Twins have completely collapsed, and they're still in this because of the wild card. So hey, who knows? We could be playing Seattle again in a week.
Yeah, I don't like that. I just
I
want
don't
to
know.
say
I think I'd rather see Seattle than Detroit. Detroit's on fire right now, and they've got starting pitching that we historically have had trouble with. So it's
Yeah, I just feel like we wouldn't play Detroit. I'd rather play the Twins or Kansas City. Because I think Detroit's going to be the 2 seed out of the wild card. So
right. Well, it's a tie right now. I guess they
Yeah.
have the tiebreaker with Kansas City.
yeah. So give me Minnesota or Kansas City over just being bored with seeing Seattle.
Minnesota has one good starting pitcher. Actually, so does the Tigers, but that's the guy who's going to win the Cy Young. So I would lean to the Twins here.
Yeah, I would rather like I said, Kansas City or the Twins, since we've pretty much Kansas City's been in the slide that started with us. So that's, something good. Before we get to talking about playoff possibilities, though, Justin Verlander, I really found his post-game interview the other night. I've always loved the fact that Justin Verlander is completely straight with the media about what's going on with him, even if he's speaking in pitching terms that none of us understand about, oh, I'm cool because the shape of my pitch looks fine, whatever. But he talked about coming back too early, which indicates 2 things. One, I don't think it's an excuse. I think he's being completely upfront with how he was feeling. And 2, it means the neck thing was always more serious than what we were led to believe. Andy, do you think we see Justin Verlander in the postseason at all?
At this point, no. I still think he'll get his last start against Cleveland later this week, and I think that will be his farewell performance for the Astros, barring some sort of weird injury thing. There's just nothing that he's shown you in the last 3 starts, which we all said he needed to show something to Dana Brown and to Joe Espada and keep him on that playoff roster. He's not a middle reliever. He is a creature of habit and routine, and there's no way you get him ready in the middle of a game without some sort of notice. The Astros don't pitch tandem starters, so there's no way to do that piece of it. And frankly, we've got 4 better options. And at some point, you make that decision. I feel bad for Justin Verlander, somewhat bad. He's got kind of a charmed life. But from a competitor standpoint, never going to have to work a day in his life. Neither will his grandchildren. He's married to Kate Upton.
He's going to nestle in Kate Upton's bosom.
Verlander's life. I feel bad from him from the competitor standpoint, though, because he wants to be pitching better than he is. I tend to believe him that it's a matter of readiness and not a complete degradation of skills that's happened over the last couple of months. And I wish him well, and I know he's going to continue to try to pitch and get to 300 wins because that's an important goal for him. It's not going to be in an Astros uniform, and I'm going to be okay with that. Although, who knows, Jim Crane could trade for him for a 3rd time in a couple of years, if we need somebody. It will be a really interesting offseason for him, though, because the market's going to be – everybody needs starting pitching. They always do. But his asking price isn't going to be what he commanded 3 years ago. And it's going to have to be an opportunity where somebody's got a lot of runway, or you find yourself pitching for the White Sox. And I don't know that he's willing to do that at this point in his career. I could see him, 5th starter with the Yankees or the Dodgers because they have room to do that sort of thing. And honestly, we could have a pretty intelligent discussion about whether or not, I know I'm loath to bring this up, Lance McCullers Jr. threw a ball this week. I know this because Twitter said that. So, and I bring that up only because we've got 4 pitchers who may come back at some point next year: Luis Garcia, McCullers, Javier, and Urquidy. But they may not. We were expecting McCullers and Garcia since the All-Star break, and they never materialized. And so, do you bring a guy in like Verlander to come back next year, who is probably a 5th starter at this point in his career, just because he's chasing wins? I don't know. I guess it depends on the asking price, but I'm kind of resigned to the fact that whatever happens, I guess Friday or Saturday will be the last time we see Justin Verlander in an Astros uniform in a playing capacity.
Brian, you want to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is one interpretation of Verlander's comments after the game is, and I think Andy's right, he's being quite honest, is that he's giving Joe Espada permission not to pitch him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, he even was pretty upfront about understanding how it would go. And
Yeah.
I earned a lot of respect for him too because, and I a lot of respect for our fan base as well because he did not pitch well,
Mhm.
but they gave him the standing ovation when he walked off the field. It's like they understood this might be the last time, the next last time he's walking off. And I don't know. There's one of those moments where I don't love our fan base for a lot of reasons, but I like the fact that they seemed at least aware that that was happening. That kind of thing that kind of thing matters to me, Andy. I don't know where you guys are on that, but for me that matters.
No, I think it was a great moment. The fact that Verlander commented on it shows that it affected him in a positive way, uh, and that's not a bad thing. The Astros, everybody has wondered since January of 2020 how free agents would view the Astros as a potential opportunity. Jim Crane doesn't necessarily go chase pitchers or players who are going to require 7 year deals. So having anything that makes it feel a little bit warmer and fuzzier to come play for the Houston Astros, and I think a lot of that's unfounded, but I think there's still some of that out in the free agent world that I don't want to go deal with the booze, so I'll go play for somebody else. I think that helps, and I think our fan base, as a fan base, is growing up and maturing. What you're seeing now with the tail end of Gen X, which I guess most of us are square in the middle of that, a lot of the millennials, and then Gen Z. These are people who actually grew up in Houston for a large part and grew up Astros fans. The kids that I was in school with, their parents came here from Detroit, or they came here from Chicago, or they came here from the Rust Belt looking for jobs, and so their allegiances were with other teams. You have a fan base that's starting to grow up in this 7 year, 8 year run with the Astros, really 10 years. We're getting close to that. If you want to go back to 2015, we're becoming a more educated fan base. You're not going to see that on Twitter necessarily, but it's getting to the point where we understand baseball the way a lot of us think we understand football, which I think is a positive thing for the sports community in Houston.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, again, to me, like I've always leaned to the emotional side of the game, the
Mhm.
connection part, and for that, to me, I just really felt that was a really special moment. I understand that a lot of people that are numbers guys are like, well, whatever, his usefulness is done, so move on. But I don't know. I just
Yeah,
thought that was a really nice moment.
but those are different conversations, right? What they should do in the future, in the playoffs next week and next season, is a different from what has happened in the past, right? Which is that at the most important moments in this franchise's history, Justin Verlander has been a major part of them. There was some Twitter discussion last week about who's the greatest pitcher in Astros history. And by pure numbers, it's not Verlander. But by sort of memories and moments, you can make a really good case for
Yeah, I totally
him.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, just getting him in 2017, just in of itself was this massive thing, including the whole reporting that night that he was coming, he was not coming, he was coming, he was not coming. Apparently, he decided they signed the release 5 seconds before the deadline. Um, you know, and of course, 2017, right? They win the American League Championship Series because Justin Verlander pitches 16 shutout innings, including a complete game in Game Two. He was
Well, and you also could add
he
that.
has been a massive star. He is a massive personality. Um, as Sandy says, partly he's a creature of habit because he can be, because he can set his own rules in a way that again works out really well. This isn't some cornerback in the NFL trying to have his own sort of practice schedule. But he sort of sets his own rules and his own sort of things because it works for him. And he has been an absolutely great Astro.
And the other thing too is, to a man, everybody in that dugout in Game 2 of the World Series says they don't win the game if Verlander doesn't come out of the clubhouse and start chewing them out and reminding them who they are. And
Mhm.
I think both of us as long-term fans who have been down that road before of, oh, great, here it is, here we go again, probably felt a little bit of that too, right, Andy? I mean, that was definitely a moment. Although I found it off-putting how hairy his shoulders are.
Well, I know you're not a basketball fan, but if you watched the Rockets after they acquired Clyde Drexler, and you were a Rockets fan at that period, you would have got used to men with large amounts of shoulder hair for no apparent reason. And Drexler's was gray on his shoulders, so that was even more of a off-putting sort of. I need to go manscape a lot to avoid that moment. Verlander is part of the pantheon. You think about this 10-year run, and you think about certainly Altuve and Bregman because they're still here, but Verlander's right up there with those guys. He's been there for every big moment since 2017. There was a lot of relief on his shoulders in 22 when he finally got his World Series win, which was, I think, the one thing that he was lacking with the additional win in a World Series game. And that was, by the skin of his teeth, but he got it. There is the numbers piece of it, certainly, and Brian will talk more eloquently on that when we get to have that conversation, when we know what the end state looks like. But I think there is the imparting knowledge piece, the willingness to learn, which, just setting an example for other guys in the dugout. I know Dallas Keuchel got a lot of praise for his powers of persuasion for getting Verlander to accept the trade. And I don't know how much that's true or not true, because I had no idea that those two had any kind of relationship prior to that. I'd take a call from Dallas Keuchel. I don't know that Justin Verlander would.
No, there's reporting on that in Astro Bowl. He did take the call, but it was kind of awkward because Verlander's like, I actually got to make this decision in like 20 minutes, and thanks, But
and I think they even mentioned in the book, right, Brian, that they didn't know each other, so it was definitely a "how did you get my number" kind of deal.
Yeah. Like it's
who is this?
Yeah, like I'm talking with my fiance right now in really great detail about this. Thank you, but anyway.
Yeah, but I think Verlander coming over, extolling the virtues of the Astros pitching school or the staff, the ability for Brent Strom to show him new things, even at that stage of his career, that would help him, and the fact that he was willing to do it, didn't fight it, and had almost immediate success coming over. That went a long way towards not only the guys on the major league roster, but the guys within the Astros system if Justin Verlander is willing to listen to this stuff, I need to be willing to listen to this stuff. He's willing to change the way he pitches and what pitches he throws in certain counts in certain situations. I need to be willing to listen to this as well. So I think it's weeded out anecdotally some of the knuckleheads that you might normally acquire in a pitching staff over a 7-year period like the Astros have. So just the leadership piece, the being a good teammate piece, even though fans got really weird with him after he was injured in 2020 about not hanging around the clubhouse during a pandemic when he wasn't allowed to, but it's a whole separate thing. He's, when you start talking about all-time Astros teams, he's going to be one of those names that you talked about, and that's going to be for the next 30 years. That's the legacy right now. 2 World Series is great. The Cy Young is great. He should have had 2.
He does have 2.
No, I'm just talking about as an Astro.
Yeah, he has 2 as an Astro.
Well, he should have had 3 because Snell shouldn't have won that year.
That's right.
As I mentioned, the one in 2012.
To be fair, Cole, I think Cole should have won instead of Verlander, but hey, that's probably another argument.
We'll talk about Kermit a different day. He's somebody, again, and we've said this on the show before, the way people watch Yordan bat is the way that I've watched Verlander pitch since he's come over. No matter what's going on, I'll make a point to watch him pitch. Even these last 3 or 4 starts that have been so painful this year, that's been painful for him, you still see a guy who is very good at his craft, trying to set up hitters in a way that you just don't see very much anymore. Just a great all-around player. I'd love to say first ballot Hall of Famer, but baseball writers are idiots, so they have this weird rule about nobody being a first. Hey, you're not good enough. Only Babe Ruth was good enough, and somebody didn't vote for him. So but a Hall of Famer nonetheless. Just an incredible blessing to have him on our team for the last 7 years.
And I for one, I don't think he's done. I think he might have to take a page out of the Zach Greinke book and learn how to pitch differently. But I don't think he's done for a career. I just think this year it just didn't come together. I want to finish on one thing that Brian, Andy mentioned that, the rumor about, or the thought that free agents wouldn't come here because of all the stuff. I was reading The Athletic this morning, I think it was The Athletic, about how George Springer went over to Kikuchi and said, "You're going to love it there." and Kikuchi has been nothing but just excited about being here. I think Garrett Cole mentioned something in the press as well about just how much he's going to love it here. I do think that's one of the things that keeps this window going for longer is despite what the media might think, there is a really good player culture here that players, when they find out about it, want to be a part of, and that might make it easier to keep things going as we become more free agent dependent.
One, they win. Players like to win. Right? The purpose of this game, you're real, most people who are Major League Baseball players are really competitive people. My kid's a theater kid. He has none of that. We're all supposed to work together and you play a game with him and he does,
I don't know. I was at some pretty competitive speech meets where I was pretty pissed off at the results.
I got that too. But two, part of why they do that, right? And you see this with Kikuchi because they have helped reshape how he pitches in a more effective way. And I've talked about this and how the pitching coaches, Josh Miller, Bill Murphy, have been really, I think, some of the stars of this team this year. They've had a particularly good year. And it fits with the whole sort of pitching development portion. The Astros, for, all the change that has gone on at the general manager chair and all sort of the turmoil created by ownership, both in terms of things they had to do and things they didn't have to do. The player development side has been excellent. Yesterday, the Twins lost a doubleheader to the Red Sox, and their beat writer, their athletic writer, was like, this is what happens when you don't sign pitchers in the offseason. This is what happens when you don't have pitching depth. And I was looking at that and going like, we said the exact same thing about the Astros, but they're able to find Spencer Arrighetti.
Yeah.
They're able to take Ronel Blanco, and get a new pitch for him, do this, the development side of this. And so that has two benefits. One is, hey, you mind me say Kikuchi and the Astros make an offer to me that's the same as another team? Do I really want to sign somewhere else where they're going to mess me up like the Mariners and Blue Jays did, or do I want to sign the place that figured me out? And two is they're probably going to lose Kikuchi this offseason, but is AJ Blueball or Ryan Gusto the next Spencer Arrighetti, who is the next Hunter Brown, which is an effective rotation option? I don't know. That's not how they're projected right now, but they keep developing these players in a much better way than what they expect based on draft position and prospect status.
And you definitely get what Brian's saying about the sort of logistics parts of winning and all of that stuff. But I think that's something more. I think when you're a player and you're just talking to another player about uprooting family, I think also there's something else going on as far as how that team takes care of each other, you have a culture of we're all in this together that really carries through, that I think is probably more what Springer was talking about as far as you're going to love it there.
Yeah, I think when you come to a team that is led by Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman and to a certain extent Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez and Justin Verlander, it's going to be a team that is player-centric. I think the Astros have done a good job of being a franchise that takes care of their players while they're there. Do they give the contracts out that everybody wants them to give? No, they don't. And so you say goodbye to guys like George Springer, and you say goodbye to a guy like Garrett Cole and Carlos Correa. And that's sad, but the fact that all three of those guys will at the same time, in the same breath, talk about how great it is in Houston and how good an opportunity is going to be. The Astros put their pitchers in a chance to be successful. If you're in a lineup as a hitter with the Astros, you're going to be hitting around Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez, Tucker, Yainer Diaz. So you're going to have opportunities as a hitter that you might not have playing in Oakland or playing in Seattle, where there's one or two hitters that offer protection. So it's just I know we talk about the window closing, and I know a lot was put on this year and potentially next year, depending on what's going to happen at third base and first base and left field. There's some rebuilding that has to get done in the offseason. I don't necessarily know that the window's closing, though, because of the amount of pitching that we have. Brown and Arrighetti are a good base to start from. We don't know if who else is coming from AAA or AA at this point. We don't know what free agents are going to be available. We don't know how many of the 4 guys we have out with elbow injuries are coming back and going to be effective. So there'll be a lot of interesting things. I'm focused right now on this week because the next 3 games are going to be a playoff series. And that's exciting. Playoff baseball is always exciting. So when Bryce Miller decides he's going to throw baseballs to the Astros, I hope the Astros are in full playoff mode and just destroy him tonight. We've lined up our rotation well. I think it's Hunter Brown tonight, Fromber tomorrow, and then Kikuchi on Wednesday. Right now, from a hitter's perspective, the only question mark is Alvarez, and I would expect we see him 2 of the 3 games unless something more serious is happening. So it's this is the fun time of year, and fans should embrace it because we are eventually going to be at the close of the window. I don't know that it's next year though.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, one of the things that he mentioned to you is at some point in time, Fromber Valdez became 2022 Fromber again. And it's something that almost, I guess I keep going back to the emotional hole you coined at the beginning of the year, where he just became the guy that is now is back to being the ace of the staff. And it's, gives you that feeling that you can see a run coming once the playoffs start.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because between him and Hunter Brown had been among the best handful of major league pitchers over the last 4 months. So that's not the whole season, but that's a pretty significant time period. And so you pitch them games 1 and 2 in a wild card series, you feel pretty good about your chances, including if you end up against Tarek Skubal, who's going to win the Cy Young Award. Can Fromber match him? Yeah. Will he? Well, this is part of why we play the games. But it all fits into, hey, that's what, there's some of this emotional stuff with Verlander and Bregman, right? We talked about, the window maybe closing at some point in the future, and Andy's right, it's all about this year, which means, hey, for this week and for next week, because we're playing next week, it's all about the future. It's all about now, excuse me. It's all about right now, the chance this team has, and, this is a team that, you have great confidence in the playoffs, right? Because there's nothing that Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman, and frankly, at this point, Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez have not seen in the playoffs. There's no situation they don't know how to handle. And frankly, that's true for Framber Valdez. That's true for lots of guys on this team. So, can the Mariners do that tonight? I don't know. They got to win a bunch of games here to even get themselves in the playoffs. They're in a very different place than the Astros, who need to just win one game and, do that. Spray some champagne. Get ready for next week.
Andy, look, whenever Brian just said, when we're playing next week, I got a little wood and I was ready to run through a wall for him. So do we need to just fly him into the Astros clubhouse tonight before the game?
Probably. I would recommend turning your hips before you run into the wall with the wood, or else you're going to spend the next week with the doctor. I think we should be excited. I think Astros fans should be excited. Like I said, this is a playoff series this week. You get a little bit of time off before we open up next week with whoever we're playing. One of the really interesting things, though, is if you look at the records of teams, and everybody's had different highs and lows during the season, the Astros certainly have. There is not a dominant team in baseball this year.
There's no 100-win team.
That's crazy.
You're going to have a bunch of teams clumped together that have as good a chance of winning as anybody else, which should make for a really exciting October. And if you're going to have that situation, I would tend to go with the team that's got the most experience as being one of the things that is going to differentiate you from some of the other contenders. And if you're talking about playoff experience, there is no team that has more playoff experience going into these playoffs than the Astros. And I expect it to start showing up during the series with Seattle. I think the Astros take care of business, hopefully fairly early in the series. I really, as much as I selfishly would love to watch them clinch on Wednesday while I'm there, I would really just as soon take a spring training game on Wednesday while we're there.
I told you, I want to be watching Wednesday in a championship T-shirt already. All right, Brian, we got final thought from Andy. Any final thoughts from you?
Hey, this is the fun time of year. Win a game this week, go to the playoffs, play next week. Enjoy it.
And this is the fun time of year, and I'm sure that the three of us are going to be back a lot more during the playoffs, as is our tradition. But until then, for Andy, for Brian, I'm Jim Christopher. Go Astros.